Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar hosted by MassRobotics Healthcare Robotics Working Group. My name is Juan Necochea, and I'm Director of Strategic Partnerships at MassRobotics. We're thrilled to have you here to dive into the fascinating world of healthcare robotics with our esteemed collaborators, Maxon and Harmonic Drive. These are both organizations that are recognized as leaders in the field of automation and robotics. At MassRobotics, we pride ourselves on being the largest independent robotics hub dedicated to accelerating innovation and adoption in robotics, automation, and embodied AI. Our mission is to foster the development of successful technology companies by providing them with essential resources, workspace, and valuable connections. Our working groups are open to the entire robotics and automation community, and they're designed to meet industry needs and drive the adoption of robotics for both commercial and societal benefit. I encourage anyone interested to reach out and get involved. We currently have working groups in various sectors, including drones, AMRs, healthcare. Thank you all for those that expressed interest prior to in the registration process for joining our healthcare robotics working group. I'm going to follow up with you after this event with details on how to participate. Please remember to keep your mics muted through this process. Okay, so I'd like to also highlight our healthcare robotics startup catalyst program, developed in collaboration with Festo, Mitsubishi Electric, Novanta, and MITRE. This program supports healthcare robotics startups by offering mentorship, access to resources, and opportunities to connect with key industry stakeholders. The focus areas include clinical care, hospital automation, precision medicine, and assistive technologies, and more, to be honest. Companies can benefit from expert mentorship and introductions to potential investors and customers. The applications are open for the next cohort are open till next week, so November 1st. I encourage all relevant companies to apply, and I also encourage you to promote this opportunity with your network because we feel it's a great opportunity for all companies that are relevant in this space. Okay, so today we'll hear from our featured speakers, Sandro, who leads the Global Business Development for Lab Automation and Life Science at Maxon, and Mike Beasley, the National Sales Manager for U.S. Industrial Automation at Maxon. Our moderator for today's session is Mary Jane McCraven, who serves as the Marketing and Business Development Manager at Harmonic Drive. Welcome to all three of you. After the presentation, we'll open the floor for participant questions to ensure that everybody gets a chance to engage with today's conversation. Please provide your questions in the chat section so that we can address them during the Q&A section. You can do so throughout the presentation. You do not need to wait till the end. Now, without further ado, let's dive into today's session. I'd like to hand it over to our first speaker, Mike, to give you a brief introduction to Maxon. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Juan, and thanks to MassRobotics for setting this up. We have ongoing collaboration with MassRobotics, and thanks again. I've been at Maxon for a couple of years, 25 of them, and my current role is to be business development for U.S. Industrial. That includes lab automation. And then Sandro Walter is at our factory in Switzerland. He has been there a number of years as well. He can tell you how many. But we're a privately owned company. We're owned by the grandson of Bronze Shavers. So we're about a half hour from Lucerne, and that's where Sandro works. I work on the West Coast, Southwest Washington. So Sandro will kind of go through these slides, and I'll stay up with them. So as far as our company, we have a global network. We're worldwide. When you look at the countries listed, they're all wholly owned subsidiaries. The only reps that we deal with are the bottom 8. So mostly our business is directly with our customers with the factory and not through reps and distributors. That gives, our belief is that gives a better experience, more direct contact with us. Also want to thank everybody for your time here. That was when my microphone was muted. I know everybody's busy. Thanks for joining us, and hopefully down the road, maybe we can see each other commercially somewhere, because I'm all over the world, certainly in the US. So as far as our operations, again, we're based in Sachsen, Switzerland. That's our headquarters. That's where our drives are assembled. As far as gearboxes, they come from Germany. France does value add. The Netherlands is our center of excellence for semiconductor. Hungary does some of our low-cost products. And then the USA has our own value add facility. Korea does some of our motors, and then the UK does Parvelux. As far as the product itself, really the main thing for us is a solution for the customer. So we take your requirements, work backwards into our product. We're not pushing our product into your application, especially in lab automation, where there are a lot of requirements that are unique and that are challenging. So what gives us the ability to work backwards is the fact that we have a broad breadth of product. So we can take requirements from the customer, from the application, and work backwards, not try to put our product into something where it really may not belong, and then also collaborate with our customers. So we have electronics, we have motors, we have gearboxes, we have brakes, we have linear, and we'll get into some of our linear with our spindle drives. But I think you can see my mouse, correct? Can you see my mouse on the screen? You cannot. Okay. So kind of the core of our technology is the ironless core rotor, as opposed to typically a lot of the motors are copper wound iron core. And the benefits of that is it gives you more power density. We have our magnet on center. If you look above where we have a cutaway, our magnet and our rotor are very tight tolerance. They're very minimal air gaps, so we get high efficiencies, which allows us to do things very small. Our motors go down to 4 millimeters in diameter, and so that's a benefit in most applications. A general overview, again, we start with the requirements, go back to the product that's the most applicable. But when we have a problem or a challenge from our customers, we'll typically start with our base product, our commercial off-the-shelf cost product, and we'll build on that first in more of an assembly, a complete assembly, and then in a solution that's integrated, a mechatronic solution. But we'll typically start with our base product and build to your schedules and get to our final solution. We have 4 major markets. Industrial automation is where lab automation is. So, and it includes pretty much everything other than medical, aerospace, and mobility solutions. And I have that whole market in the US. Sandro Walter has lab automation in Switzerland, so he's very specialized.
Yeah, welcome everybody. As Mike said, I'm Sandro Walter. I'm here based in Switzerland and responsible for global business development, specifically on laboratory automation. So today's webinar is about how the workflow in the laboratories can be optimized by using the right drive system, advanced drive system solutions, like Mike explained, in order to increase, for example, accuracy, efficiency, and scalability in the lab. But so why is this still important? So the labs today are still faced with rising requirements. And for example, a study conducted by WHO predicts that by 2050, over 1.5 billion people will be aged over 65. And this increase, combined with chronic illness, new drug developments, new viruses, means that the labs have to process more and more tests and therefore also automate more and more steps. And at the same time, the labs are faced with staff shortages, rising costs for the buildings, and this makes automation even more essential. But also there is a reproducibility crisis or in research. A study conducted by Nature in 2018 figured out that 70% of researchers in the laboratory are not able to reproduce others' results, or 50% were not even able to reproduce their own results. So this again highlights the importance to have very precise, accurate instruments and laboratory instrument automated in order to prevent errors and avoid manual steps. So, and these pressures on cost, quality, and other points mean that more has to be automated. And so automation isn't just an option anymore, a nice to have. It's actually getting more and more important and essential. So, but what are the challenges in the laboratory today? We're going to go a bit into that. By our work with our customers who are instrument manufacturers, but also by understanding the market, we gain a lot of insights, what challenges the end users of these instruments have in the hospital, research labs, and so on. But the issues that we identified are not isolated issues that we saw. It's also confirmed by a study that was conducted by Agilent that confirmed these challenges in the laboratory. First, there is a higher demand for high throughput and productivity in the labs. They have to process hundreds, if not even thousands of samples a day. And this means the instruments have to process the samples faster and the steps in between have to be automated. And then also workflow efficiency, again, about how quickly how easily the workflow is in the lab with the individual instruments. And what we see is that more steps get automated in between instruments, like mobile robots moving samples from one instrument to the other, if you don't already have a total laboratory automation instrument. And then also there is the downtime and maintenance issue. When one of those key instruments fails during operation, this causes costly delays in the workflow and disrupts critical testing in clinical trial, for example, or other steps. So this means you need to have reliable instruments where the components hold long. And then also space constraints. Labs have less and less space available. And so the design of the instrument has to become more compact. For example, we see more benchtop solutions or even portable devices that can be used and that are way smaller. And so we at Maxon, we try to understand these challenges in the industry, and this helps us as well to understand the challenge of our customers and therefore offer tailored solutions. So now I've talked about the broader challenges in laboratory automation, healthcare, life science generally. Today we will focus on liquid handling and centrifugation because both applications, they have its unique challenges. Some of the challenges I mentioned are also part of that, but then these individual challenges mean different requirements in terms of the drive system for this application. So let's start with focusing on liquid handling. This process is a part of many lab operations for the sample preparation, for the transferring of the samples, for the analysis part, and whether it's in diagnostics, pharmaceutical research, or high throughput labs, precision of the dispensing and the liquid is very important here. So let's have a look at the challenges that we see. Since these labs have to process hundreds of thousands of samples, like I said before, high throughput is very important. For example, one laboratory in London processes about 10,000 samples a day. And this means that you need drive systems, not just motors, but the whole system, that are highly dynamic, that can change direction very fast. And that's why we always try to find the right solution to increase the dynamics and the speed of the whole instruments. But then also downtime and maintenance, here is an issue. It was mentioned by 70% in Agilent survey that this is one of the issues they have in the laboratory. And so that's why we, for example, always recommend brushless motors because they have a longer lifetime than brushed motors, or we also recommend using high quality, long lifetime material, such as ceramic, for the gearbox or other parts. And this helps so that the instruments don't interrupt the process and don't have to be repaired. And then, as said, workflow efficiency is very critical. It's very important that these individual steps are performed accurately and precise, and therefore also it's important to use, for example, high resolution encoder for your motors in order to have to be able to dispense, for example, in this specific case, very precisely. And then lastly, as well, space constraints. What we see is, again, here as well, that the instrument manufacturers try to shrink their footprint of their instruments. For example, for the pipetting channels, we see a trend towards 9mm thick channels instead of 18mm thick channels in order to reduce overall footprint, and then for the whole instrument as well. So these are the challenges we see in this application. But now let's gonna focus on one specific case where we see how we've helped the customer to improve his application. So the liquid handling instruments typically have 4 axes: X, Y, Z, and pipetting. The X-axis moves the channels individually from left to right or back and front, and the Y-axis from back to front. And the Z-axis is responsible of moving the pipetting cassette up and down, and the pipetting axis does the dispensing of the liquid, sucking it up and dispensing it down to a range of nanoliters. So here in this specific project, it was about the pipetting axis, and the goal was to have a thinner channel, a smaller footprint, a 9mm thin channel, but also increasing lifetime of the instrument so that reducing the downtime, and then also having a high precise system that is capable of dispensing liquids down to nanoliters while still being able to dispense liquids up to 1 milliliter. And then lastly as well, high dynamics was very important in order to increase the throughput of the instrument. So let's have a look how we've worked together with the customer. So the collaboration started with a motor, with a request from a customer, a 16mm motor and gearbox. But because we knew the requirements for the axis, for the movement, for the syringe piston pump in the channel, and we knew the trend in the industry is towards 9mm thick channels instead of 18. So, and we did see that an 8mm motor could also handle the load. So we recommended going to an 8mm motor that allows for a 9mm thick cassette. And also because of the lifetime, we recommended using brushless motors. And because of the very precise dispensing with small volumes, we recommended using a high resolution encoder. And then when the partnership evolved, we also offered to integrate a lead screw into the gearbox. This offered the advantage of having less assembly step, no coupling needed of the lead screw to the output shaft of the gearbox, so resulted also in less parts. And also the overall length was reduced of the assembly, and also the customer would get everything from one single source. And then also, we knew that long lifetime is very important. You don't want your instrument to fail. So we came up with the idea and thought about why not, instead of steel lead screw, using ceramic lead screw, because with the ceramic lead screw, the lifetime gets extended, the performance is better, so efficiency, it's less wear and friction. That's why also efficiency is higher. And then also you don't need any lubrication. And this helped to increase the overall lifetime. So, and lastly as well, the lead screws from ceramic could be produced at Maxon in-house because we have the capability to produce ceramic parts in-house. And then we sent both versions to the customer. He did some testing, lifetime testing, and he was very impressed about how much longer the lifetime and then in the end the instrument is with the ceramic lead screw version. Most of you may think, okay, ceramic is much more expensive, but in this application, often steel lead screws need very special coating, also because of lifetime and friction, and therefore the ceramic lead screw is not much more expensive, but then the benefits justify this slight higher price. So that was how we worked together here with a customer. And now let's move on to the next example, which is about centrifugation. When it comes to the centrifuge, it's a key part of many lab applications, and it's for either clinical diagnostic or pharma research. It's for separating the biological samples, refining chemical mixtures, and then preparing those samples for the further analysis. And we all know that making these machines work effectively is what's key is a reliable, high-speed, stable performance of these centrifuges. And so in this section, we're going to talk about these technical challenges that we see when designing a centrifuge and choosing the right drive system for it. When we're talking about that, most critical thing is to have a high speed, as I just said, very precisely, because this speed creates the necessary centrifugal force to separate the components, either, for example, the plasma from the blood, or other applications. And if your speed isn't precise, it can influence the result of the separation. And so the next thing is also noise and vibration. We know centrifuges can go up to hundreds thousands of RPM. Some of them are just in the 10,000 RPM range or 5. But with having a rotor at that high speed, that generates a lot of noise that can come from imbalance of the motor, for example, from the commutation and other sources. So it's very important to have a well-balanced system and reduce those vibration and noise. And then there is the mechanical stress that comes with such a high centrifugal force. Obviously, if you have such a high speed, you're going to have a high load on your motor or rotor of the centrifuge. And the motor, you need to have an appropriate bearing system that can handle these high loads. And lastly, ramping up, speeding up the acceleration process is not required on many centrifuges. They ramp up very slowly, even hundreds of seconds or tens of seconds. But if we talk about throughput in the laboratory, it's a key to still be able to increase the speed to your desired level quickly and decelerate as well quickly, because then you can manage more samples within a given time. And this obviously increases the efficiency of the lab. So what's important when you consider a drive system for these centrifuges? First of all, you need a very robust drive system, as mentioned before, that can handle very high speeds and loads with a bearing system, a good bearing system, and that can handle this mechanical stress. Also important, a good thermal management, for example. But then also you need high torque, because when you have the samples in the rotor, and the rotors typically are very heavy, you have to ramp up to the desired speed. And this requires a high torque. But once it's spinning at the speed, it doesn't require that high torque. So if you have a motor or drive system that has a high thermal time constant, you're able to overload the motor for a long time before you reach the speed. And that means you could potentially choose a smaller motor, which again means a smaller centrifuge. And then as well, precision and stability. It's important to maintain this speed. What helps there is, for example, having a motor with a high rotor inertia, then the speed is more stable. If you have a low rotor inertia, it's more sensitive to changes, and also using a high resolution encoder so that you always know the exact speed of it. And then lastly as well, low vibration is something we all understand that's very essential. For example, high quality bearings, precise motor control, and other points. So managing this is very important, and that's where we're going to focus a little bit more now on the vibration and noise. Where can this noise and vibration come from? Well, there are multiple sources within a motor that could cause noise and vibration. For example, the commutation system in a brushed motor, but also the commutation frequency of a brushless motor, but also the bearings, the teeths in the gearbox, and other points, or electromagnetic sources as well, like PWM. And these noises get transferred through the structure, the housing of the motor, gearbox, or the mechanical design of the centrifuge, and then emitted, they act like an amplifier, like a loudspeaker, and then the noise is emissioned. So the question is, how can we reduce those noises and vibration in the whole system? So there are multiple ways you could do that. For example, you could use dampening elements such as silicon pads, or dampening elements like rubber rings, other parts, in order to reduce the noise at the source and avoid these resonances. But then also you can mount it on a stable mechanical structure, choosing, for example, the right material and thick-walled material instead of thin-wall that causes membrane effects. That helps to reduce it. And then there are also other ways to reduce the noise, like a well-balanced motor. I think I mentioned that before, reducing the friction and also the PMW frequency on an electromagnetic side reduces the noise. And then also commutation-wise, instead of block commutation, a field-oriented control with a sinusoidal commutation makes it way more smoothly and therefore generates less noise. But for now, let's go into, again, a case study and how we work together with a customer to help to solve these issues. So it started with a high disturbing noise at commutation frequency at 2.75 kilohertz. And then with the customer together, we added a silicon pad to decouple the noise and dampen the noise in the application. But apparently, because the bearing design had to be changed because of the high loads of the centrifuge, this was not anymore an option. There was no room to add these silicon pads. So the next approach was to shift the resonance frequency, for example, or reduce it by potting the motor in the application. And therefore, this helped. We did some testing at the customer and here, and we reduced the noise from 45 millipascal to about 25, I think. Yeah. So, but this was still, the noise was still there, as you can see. So we thought about, because at the same time, we were developing a new speed controller with sinusoidal commutation instead of block. And we knew the customer is using block commutation. And you've seen it before, sinusoidal helps to reduce the noise. So we recommended using a sinusoidal speed controller instead of block. And then we performed some testing in-house here at Maxon with a test fixture that was provided by the customer and compared a potted motor, stator from the motor with block commutation with sinusoidal. And the results were impressive. The noise disappeared. And the customer was very happy that we managed to fight it at the cause instead of just shifting it or reducing it slightly. We were able to remove it. So, and these two collaborative approaches that I showed show that it's very important to understand the goals of a customer and the industry in order to recommend the right products to solve these challenges. So how can we help you on your next project? Well, we believe the key for success is about understanding the application of the customer, as I talked about, and also the industry trends, understanding them so that we can proactively bring in new ideas, recommendations, changes to what he asked for a Maxon, and then also design a tailored solution to the application. Like Mike in the beginning mentioned, we want to have a tailored solution for specific application. That's our approach. That's help to solve these challenges here, especially in laboratory automation. And then also we are a reliable partner over the whole process. So ideally you get involved very early in the project so that you can bring in design ideas, changes very early. And then over the whole project, you're part, and we're working very closely with our customers to ensure that everything is going well. So to wrap up today's webinar, thank you for joining today. We hope that we were able to give some valuable insights of how a close collaboration with customers and understanding the market and the trends helps to design the right solutions and solve technical challenges. We will look forward to collaborating with you and finding the right solution for your application. Thank you.
Thanks, Sandro. Thank you, Michael. Great presentation. I definitely gained some new knowledge and insights into the whole process. So thank you for sharing that. So we have a few questions here. I want to take a little deeper dive into some things. So my first question is, what factors influence Maxon's decision to target lab automation as a key market? What did you see? What was driving that direction for you?
So, I mean, I've showed the challenges and what that means in terms of requirements that you need. In this market, you need products of high quality, instruments, long lifetime, high reliability, precision. And these are values that Maxon has as its core. That's where we come from high quality components, drive systems with high reliability. And I think that's one of the main reasons why this is a why also we have been in this market for very long time. Just our 10th customer of Maxon in Maxon history was one of the customers in this market. So it shows that we share these values and that we have the right products that help in this industry.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it is a fascinating industry, and there's so much growth going on, so much automation. So it's a great spot for you to be in. Here's another question. Think about this from this perspective. So why has Maxon favored more of a solution-based approach instead of a component development approach in your practice?
So, I mean, the examples I showed kind of explain why it's important to have the solution-based approach. We come from the components, but as I showed during the presentation, each application comes with its unique challenges, and then just taking standard components, putting them together as a product doesn't necessarily help in this specific case. So we are committed to deliver the right tailored solution to the application and deliver everything from one source to the customer, and that helps him. That's why we are focusing towards market-specific tailored solutions instead of just offering commodity components or just the components.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Another part of that I would add is that a lot of that's been driven by the customers as well. The customers want more complete solutions. They want to go. They want to minimize their supply chain. They want to go to less suppliers. So it's been driven by the customers as well.
Yeah, and also the slide that Mike showed with standard components, modified and special products, just about 20% or even a bit less what we sell is purely standard components. 80% has always been customized in some degree, some a bit less with just a different connector or shaft, slight modifications. But now we have more and more customized products because in some applications, there isn't even a solution on the market that could do the job for the application. So you have to really develop something new for this application.
Yeah, I would probably add to that the solution-based approach is also faster time to market for your customers, also considering supply chain considerations and hiccups that we've had and all experienced, and certainly during times of COVID, and you just never know what's going to happen, but it just gets customers' products to market faster. So good approach. We have another one here. So how does Maxon navigate the regulatory compliance, which is huge in this particular industry, by developing robotic solutions for healthcare?
So, Mike, I will quickly answer. You can jump in. We have a long experience, for example, also in the medical sector. So we are ISO 13485 certified our productions for some products, and we have a long experience in that industry. That helps us as well for the laboratory automation part with new regulations such as in vitro diagnostic that come up to be able to meet those requirements, regulatory requirements, either in production supply chain and or in the design of the systems. Mike, do you want to add something?
No, that's good.
Okay, thank you for that. So consider the liquid handling case study for a moment. Just want to touch back on that. Is the design process benefited by a collaborative approach between Maxon and the client?
Yeah. So we aim to very closely work with the customer. And that's why I said it's very important to be in the process very early, because if a customer is already almost finished with its design, you're limited with what you can offer and integrate. And then it's very limited how you can help him. So we try to be involved very early and bring up new ideas from our side that help him and work very closely on a regular basis. And also, you've seen the global network. In almost all countries, we have sales subsidiaries that are owned by Maxon. And the reason is we want to be close to the customers, and our sales folks are all engineers by heart, and they want to closely work with the customer and help them on their development of the next instrument.
I'll add to that. We have a regional, national, global approach. So Sandro's at the global level. So he's at the factory where the product's being made, where we have the history. We know the requirements. I have the national where what's happening throughout the country, instead of having islands, is integrated into a common approach. It's also integrated into treating customers similarly in similar markets. And then from a day-to-day perspective, we have the regional, and the regional would likely be doing a lot of the face-to-face collaboration with the customer because they're closer by, while leveraging on the national and the global. So it's a complete approach where we cover it from all levels and, for what's best for the customer.
Okay, thank you. So, everyone here knows how AI is really impacting so many aspects of business and personal life across the globe. So how is Maxon integrating AI into your healthcare strategies, and what role do you think AI will play in enhancing robotic applications in healthcare?
So, well, AI will definitely play an important role in the whole, for example, with the analysis of the data that is generated by the labs to have new findings, for example. So, and to come to the first part of the question, how do we help, or what's our approach in this area? Well, what we see, especially also in the healthcare sector, that companies have already also been using motors as a sensor in the instrument to know if something is not working well, or like a predictive maintenance sensor. And we also started to work on that. Our approach is that our motor can be used as a sensor that monitors the profile in the application, and therefore predictively says if something is wrong, and then solves this whole instrument of having a failure and downtime in the laboratory. So we really try to offer a service there that helps to monitor the whole instrument and using the motor as a sensor. And we use obviously AI models to so you would have a certain profile of the application that is like the ideal profile with gear or with from a belt drive, and then you would have this, and if there is something off on that profile, the AI would predict that and see that, and then give you information that something is not good in the instrument.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to take a couple of questions from the chat now. I have one for Sandro. So what are the typical RPMs for smaller motors and its lifespans in laboratory applications?
So the smaller motors, I mean, generally we have different types of motors. I wouldn't say that's just because of the size, but we have speed motors, ECX, brushless speed motors. They can go up to 60,000 or even more. They start at the size of 4 millimeter, but go all the way up to 22 or 32 millimeter. So that's, it's more the technology. It's iron-less winding instead of an iron core winding on those motors. The iron core motor would allow for less speed, but has higher torque. And sorry, can you repeat the other part of the question?
So the question was, what are the typical RPMs for smaller motors and their lifespans in laboratory applications?
Lifespans. Okay, sorry, I missed that. So yeah, if you use a brushless motor and not taking into account the gearbox, you typically, I mean, it's very hard to predict what's the lifetime because it depends on environment, the temperature, the load, the speed. But from what we specify in our catalog, with nominal catalog values, brushless motors tend to have tens of thousands of hours as lifetime. And the brushed motors with a brushed system, they have not tens of thousands, but thousands of hours. And so this, for example, here is an 8 millimeter motor that I talked about. And this has a maximum speed of, I think, 40,000, 50,000, and a very long lifetime, yeah.
Okay, thank you. I have another question from the chat. So, and this is also for Sandro. You mentioned possibly adding materials to dampen vibrations. So in lab applications, how important is it to think about contamination from wear and possible release of particles or outgassing of rubbers?
Well, I mean, if, for example, if you think about the liquid handling part, if you have any liquids or grease that would come out and then affect the samples, that's definitely an issue. So you have to make sure that, I mean, in our motor gearboxes, it's typically not, it's normal lubrication, but the reason is it's all enclosed from where the samples are. That's all completely separated from each other. Also in the centrifuges, the sample are on the top in the tubes, so they are pretty much protected from the motor part that's on the bottom of the centrifuge, so there is no contamination there. But then outgassing isn't something that we had many requests that this is an issue. That's more something we had in the space applications, obviously, so far, but not in this laboratory environment yet.
But we do have special lubricants in the case of outgassing, and you use Teflon instead of PVC and those type of things.
Thank you. All right, I have time for one more question. So last question here is what hardware and software components does Maxon develop in-house versus through partnerships?
So all the electronics, for example, and so basically all products are developed in-house, either motor, gearbox, encoder, controller, the software for our controllers, and then the motors are all manufactured in-house, the gearboxes are manufactured in-house, the encoder design is done in-house, but the PCB is also for the controllers. That's something we buy, but we own the IP, we do the whole design of the PCB, but then that's something we buy. But all other components are manufactured in-house in various locations, like Mike showed. The iron core motors, also like this 90 flat here that I talked about in the centrifuge case study, is manufactured in Korea, but the majority is here in Switzerland still.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, thanks everyone. That concludes our question and answer session for today. I'm going to just turn it over to Juan so he can close out the webinar. But thank you everyone for joining.